The sound of her key in the lock came at exactly 8:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I know because I was staring at the microwave clock, wondering if she'd actually show up or if this was another one of her games. 2 weeks. 14 days of radio silence, except for a single text message that read, "Getting closure with Derek. Don't wait up. Don't wait up." Like I was some faithful dog who'd been pacing by the door. Seren walked into our kitchen like she owned the place, which technically she did, half of it anyway. She dropped her designer bag on the chair with that casual confidence she'd perfected over our 8 years of marriage. The bag made a soft thud against the wood, and I caught a whiff of cologne that definitely wasn't mine. "I spent 2 weeks with Derek for closure," she announced, not looking at me. She was already moving toward the refrigerator, probably looking for the bottle of wine she kept hidden behind the leftover containers. I didn't ask why. I didn't ask where. I wiped my hands on the dish towel I'd been holding for the past 10 minutes, turned to face her, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, not hurt, something much more dangerous. Clarity. "Which credit card did you use on the third night?" The question came out so quietly that for a second I wasn't sure I'd actually spoken. But Seren stopped moving. Her hand, which had been reaching for the refrigerator handle, froze in midair. She turned slowly, and for the first time since she'd walked in, she looked directly at me. Her face went pale. Not the dramatic movie star pale that she used to get when we fought about money or her mother's visits. This was different. This was the color of someone who'd just realized they'd walked into a trap. She reached for her phone. I took it from the table before her fingers got there. The screen was still lit up with notifications. 17 missed calls from D and a string of text messages that started with, "Did you delete the hotel invoice?" I scrolled down, my thumb moving with mechanical precision, until I found what I was looking for. The Grandview Hotel, Presidential Suite, 3 nights, 2 guests, charged to our joint credit card, the one she'd insisted we keep for emergencies. I held up the phone so she could see the screen. "The invoice you forgot to delete." Seren's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She was staring at the phone like it was a snake that had just bitten her. Her hands were shaking now, and I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes as she tried to figure out how to spin this. "Mason, I can explain." "No need." I set the phone back down on the table, face up, so the hotel invoice stayed visible between us. I already know everything I need to know. That night, I didn't kick her out. I didn't scream or throw things or demand an explanation that would probably be half lies anyway. Instead, I did something much more effective. I locked her out of every account linked to my name. It took me exactly 4 hours and 37 minutes to systematically remove Seren from every digital footprint of our shared life. I started with the joint phone plan, canceled her line at 11:23 p.m. while she was in the shower, probably scrubbing off the smell of her closure. Then I changed the password to our shared cloud storage, the one that automatically backed up all her photos, messages, and contacts. By morning, her iPhone was nothing more than an expensive paperweight. The joint credit cards came next. As the primary account holder, I had the authority to freeze them temporarily due to suspicious activity. The irony wasn't lost on me. Spending $3,000 on a hotel room with your ex-boyfriend definitely qualified as suspicious in my book. I saved the best for last. Our shared email account, the one she used for everything from online shopping to staying in touch with her book club friends. I didn't delete it. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I set up an auto-forward rule that would send copies of all her incoming messages to a new address I'd created specifically for this purpose. By 6 a.m., I was sitting at our kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a comprehensive digital dossier of my wife's betrayal. Seren came downstairs at 7:15, already dressed for work in her sharp gray suit and the pearl necklace I'd bought her for our 5th anniversary. She looked like she was preparing for battle, which, in retrospect, she probably was. "My phone isn't working," she said, holding up the device like it was evidence of some great injustice. "Really? That's strange." I took another sip of coffee. "Maybe you should call customer service." She tried. For 20 minutes, she stood in our living room, using the landline we'd kept for emergencies, trying to explain to various customer service representatives why her phone had suddenly stopped working. I listened from the kitchen, marveling at how convincing she could sound when she was lying through her teeth. "This is ridiculous," she finally said, slamming down the receiver. "They're saying the account was canceled by the primary account holder." Huh, that is weird. At noon, while I was reviewing security protocols for a client's network infrastructure, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Derek's name, and for a moment I considered letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. "Mason?" Derek's voice was higher than usual, strained. "Hey man, I think there might be some kind of technical glitch with Serene's phone or something." "Oh? What kind of glitch?" "Well, all my messages to her are somehow getting forwarded to other people. My wife got them. My boss got them. Even my mother-in-law somehow received a screenshot of our conversation about the hotel room." I leaned back in my office chair, watching the rain streak down my window. "That does sound like a technical issue. Have you tried turning it off and on again?" There was a long pause. "Mason, did I what, Derek?" Another pause. Longer this time. I could practically hear him sweating through the phone. "Nothing. Never mind. I'll figure it out." He hung up, and I allowed myself a small smile. The auto-forward rule was working even better than I'd hoped. Every message Serene had received in the past 24 hours had been automatically copied to Derek's wife, his business partners, and a carefully selected list of mutual friends and family members. But Serene wasn't finished. I should have known she wouldn't go down without a fight. I came home that evening to find half our furniture missing and a certified letter taped to the front door. The letter was from a law firm I'd never heard of, informing me that my wife had filed a report claiming financial abuse and that all joint accounts had been frozen pending investigation. My own savings account, the one I'd had since college, the one with only my name on it, was inaccessible. Somehow, Serene had convinced the bank that I was using financial control as a form of domestic abuse. She'd moved out while I was at work, taking only documents and personal items, nothing that could be considered marital property. It was a surgical strike, designed to leave me with no legal recourse while simultaneously painting me as the villain. My phone started ringing at 7 p.m. First my mother, then my sister, then my brother-in-law. All of them had received carefully edited screenshots of our text message conversations, messages that made me look controlling and manipulative. "Mason, honey," my mother's voice was full of concern, "Serene sent me some very troubling messages. She says you've been monitoring her phone and controlling her access to money." "Mom, it's not what it looks like." "She seemed very scared, sweetheart. Maybe you two should consider counseling." By the time I hung up, I'd had the same conversation 6 times with 6 different family members. Serene had executed a perfect preemptive strike, turning everyone against me before I even knew we were at war. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated exactly how thorough I could be when I put my mind to it. I spent the next 3 days in what my best friend Drew would later call full forensic accountant mode. The difference was, I wasn't investigating financial fraud. I was documenting a betrayal so complete and calculated that it deserved its own case study. My sister Erin, who'd been practicing family law for 12 years, met me at Drew's bar on Friday night. She slid into the booth across from me, her briefcase hitting the table with a solid thunk that made the other patrons look over. "Okay, little brother," she said, pulling out a legal pad covered in her precise handwriting. "Let's see what you've got." I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward her. GPS logs from her car for the past month. Every location, every stop, every mile. Erin's eyebrows went up. How did you... The car insurance app. She agreed to the monitoring for a discount on our premium, forgot to opt out when she started her little adventure. The data told a story that was even worse than I'd imagined. Serene hadn't just spent 2 weeks with Derek for closure. She'd been meeting him regularly for over a month, always at the same hotel, always on the same days of the week when I was working late on client projects. There's more, I said, clicking to the next folder. Door camera footage from our neighbor across the street. The video files showed Derek's BMW in our driveway on 3 separate occasions when I was out of town for work. In one particularly damning clip, you could see Serene walking him to his car at 6 a.m., both of them clearly wearing the same clothes from the night before. And this, I said, opening the final folder, is the smoking gun. The voice recording was 18 minutes long. Serene had pocket-dialed her own voicemail while talking to her friend Lila, and the entire conversation had been automatically saved to our shared cloud storage before I'd changed the passwords. Erin listened to the whole thing, her expression growing darker with each passing minute. The recording captured Serene and Lila discussing exactly how to manage the situation if I ever found out about the affair. They talked about which lawyers to call, which family members would be most sympathetic, and how to frame the narrative to make me look like the controlling, abusive husband. She's been planning this for weeks, Erin said when the recording ended. This wasn't just an affair, Mason. This was a calculated exit strategy. I know. I closed the laptop and leaned back in the booth. The question is, what do I do about it? Drew, who'd been listening from behind the bar while polishing glasses, walked over with 3 beers. You burn it all down, he said simply. But you do it smart. What do you mean? I mean you don't get mad. You get methodical. He sat down next to Erin, his expression more serious than I'd seen it in years. She played dirty, but she also played predictable. She went to the same people, used the same tactics, followed the same playbook that every cheating spouse uses when they get caught. Erin nodded slowly. He's right. She's counting on you to react emotionally, to do something stupid that she can use against you in court. So what's the alternative? You give her exactly what she gave you, Drew said. The truth, all of it, to everyone she lied to. That weekend I assembled what I started thinking of as the Serene Files, a comprehensive timeline of her affair, complete with GPS data, hotel receipts, photographs, and that damning voice recording. But I didn't just dump it all online or send angry emails to everyone we knew. Instead, I crafted individual messages to each person Serene had contacted, addressing their specific concerns and providing evidence that directly contradicted her version of events. To my mother, I sent the GPS logs showing that Serene had been at Derek's apartment on the same night she'd told me she was working late on a big HR project. I included screenshots of the hotel bills charged to our joint credit card, along with a simple note. Mom, I think you deserve to know the truth about why our marriage ended. To Serene's boss at the marketing firm where she worked as HR director, I sent a carefully edited version of the voice recording where she discussed using company resources to research divorce lawyers and admitted to falsifying her timesheet to cover her hotel visits. To Derek's wife, Monica, I delivered everything in person. Monica Ashby lived in a pristine suburban neighborhood about 20 minutes from downtown. Her house was the kind of place that belonged in a home decorating magazine, with perfectly manicured landscaping and a BMW SUV in the driveway that matched her husband's sedan. She answered the door in yoga clothes, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, looking like she'd just finished a workout. When I introduced myself, her face went through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, and finally, a kind of resigned understanding. You're Mason, she said. It wasn't a question. I am. and I think we need to talk." She invited me in, offered coffee, and sat across from me at her granite kitchen island while I laid out the evidence of our spouse's affair. Monica listened without interruption, occasionally asking for clarification on dates or locations, but mostly just absorbing the information with a calmness that surprised me. "I knew," she said finally, when I'd finished walking through the timeline. "Not the details, but I knew something was going on. Derek's been different for months. More secretive, more defensive. He started working out obsessively and buying new clothes." She picked up one of the hotel receipts, studying it like she was memorizing every detail. $3,000 for 3 nights. We had to skip our anniversary dinner because he said money was tight. "I'm sorry, Monica. I know this can't be easy to hear." She looked up at me, and I was surprised to see that she was smiling. Not a happy smile, but the kind of smile that comes when someone finally has confirmation of something they've suspected for a long time. "Actually, it's a relief," she said. "I've been questioning my own sanity for months, wondering if I was being paranoid or jealous for no reason. Now I know I wasn't crazy." She stood up and walked to a drawer near the sink, pulling out a manila folder that was already thick with papers. "I've been documenting things too," she said, setting the folder on the counter between us. "Credit card statements, phone records, receipts I found in his car. I even hired a private investigator last month, but I called it off because I wasn't sure I wanted to know the truth." I opened the folder and found myself looking at a comprehensive record of Derek's deception that went back almost 6 months. Monica had been building her own case, methodically collecting evidence of his betrayal with the same attention to detail that I'd used to document Seren's. "What are you going to do with all this?" I asked. "The same thing you're doing, I imagine. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who Derek Ashby really is." We spent the next hour comparing notes and coordinating our approach. Monica had connections in Derek's business network that I lacked, while I had the technical evidence that could prove the timeline of the affair. Together we could paint a complete picture of what our spouses had been doing behind our backs. "There's one more thing," Monica said as I was getting ready to leave. "Derek's been bragging to his golf buddies about some big real estate deal that's going to make him rich. He's been using that as an excuse for all his new spending. But I checked with his office and there is no big deal. He's been lying about that too." She handed me a business card for Derek's supervisor at the commercial real estate firm where he worked. "Thought you might find that interesting." I did find it interesting. Very interesting indeed. By Monday morning, the truth about Seren and Derek's affair had reached everyone who mattered. Family members who'd been concerned about my controlling behavior were now asking Seren some very pointed questions about her own actions. Her boss was reviewing her employment file in light of the timesheet irregularities. Derek's supervisor was wondering why his star salesman had been lying about fictitious deals while spending company time on personal matters. But Seren wasn't finished fighting. She hit back on Tuesday with a move I hadn't seen coming. She filed for a restraining order, claiming that my systematic harassment and stalking behavior was making her fear for her safety. The petition included screenshots of the messages I'd sent to family members, framing my evidence gathering as obsessive and threatening. The temporary restraining order was granted immediately, which meant I couldn't contact Seren directly or come within 500 feet of her new apartment. It also meant I couldn't access our joint safety deposit box or several other shared assets until the matter was resolved in court. Derek followed up with his own legal action, claiming that I was harassing him at work and interfering with his business relationships. His lawyer sent a cease and desist letter demanding that I stop spreading malicious lies about his client. "They're trying to control the narrative," Erin explained when she called to tell me about the legal filings. "They know the truth is out there now, so they're trying to make you look like the aggressor." "Will it work?" "Not if we play this right. The evidence is on your side, Mason. We just need to be smart about how we present it." That's when Drew came up with the idea that would change everything. "What if we didn't present it at all?" he said. We were back at his bar, which was becoming our unofficial war room. What if we let them present it for us? What do you mean? I mean, what if we gave them exactly what they're asking for? A public forum where they can tell their side of the story and you can tell yours. He was grinning now, the way he used to grin in college when he'd figured out how to get us into the good parties without paying cover. Drew, what are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time for a little family reunion. Drew's plan was elegant in its simplicity. He would host what he called a mediation gathering at his bar on Thursday night, inviting both sides of our fractured social circle for what was supposed to be a civilized discussion about moving forward constructively. Of course, Seren and Derek had no idea what they were walking into. The key, Drew explained as we set up the bar's sound system on Thursday afternoon, is to let them think they're in control. They'll come in expecting to play the victim card in front of a sympathetic audience. Instead, they're going to get a very public education in the consequences of their choices. I'd spent the week preparing for this moment, but not in the way Serene and Derek expected. Instead of planning some dramatic confrontation, I'd been quietly laying the groundwork for their own words to destroy them. The voice recording of Seren and Lila planning their deception strategy was the centerpiece, but I'd also recovered deleted text messages between Seren and Derek that painted a picture of two people who weren't just having an affair. They were actively enjoying the deception. God, I almost feel bad for Mason, one of Seren's texts read. He has no idea what's coming. But honestly, it's his own fault for being so clueless. Derek's response was even worse. At least when this is over, we won't have to sneak around anymore. Though I have to admit, the sneaking around was half the fun. These weren't the words of two people who'd fallen into an unfortunate situation. These were the words of two people who'd enjoyed hurting their spouses. The mediation gathering was scheduled for 7 p.m., but I arrived at Drew's bar at 5:30 to help with final preparations. The place looked normal from the outside, just another neighborhood bar with dim lighting and classic rock playing softly in the background. But Drew had made some subtle modifications. The sound system was connected to my laptop, hidden behind the bar where no one would notice it. Small wireless cameras, the kind used for home security, were positioned around the room to capture whatever happened from multiple angles. Most importantly, Drew had invited a carefully curated audience. Serene arrived first, at exactly 7 p.m., accompanied by her friend Lila and two co-workers from her marketing firm. She was dressed for battle in a black pantsuit that made her look professional and authoritative. She'd clearly expected this to be her moment to control the narrative. Derek showed up 10 minutes later with his own support crew, two guys from his real estate office and his brother Kevin, who'd always been one of those people who believed that loyalty to family meant never questioning their behavior. What neither Seren nor Derek realized was that Monica was already there, sitting at a corner table with my sister Erin and three of Derek's golf buddies who'd been very interested to learn about his fictitious business deals. "Thank you all for coming," Drew said, stepping behind the bar and assuming his role as host. "I know this situation has been difficult for everyone involved, and I thought it might help if we could all sit down and have an honest conversation about what happened." Seren immediately took control, just as I'd expected her to. "I appreciate Drew hosting this, but I want everyone to understand that I'm only here because my lawyer advised me to try resolving this amicably before we go to court." She looked around the room, making eye contact with each person as she spoke. "What Mason has been doing to me over the past few weeks, the harassment, the stalking, the financial abuse, it's not okay. I made a mistake by reconnecting with Derek, but that doesn't give my husband the right to systematically destroy my life." Several people nodded sympathetically. Seren had always been good at reading a room and telling people what they wanted to hear. "I think we can all agree that marriages sometimes end," she continued. "The question is whether we're going to handle this like adults, or whether Mason is going to continue this campaign of revenge." Derek stepped forward, putting a supportive hand on Serene's shoulder. I want to apologize to everyone here for my role in this situation. Seren and I have a history, and when she reached out to me for emotional support during her marital problems, I should have encouraged her to seek professional counseling instead. It was a masterful performance. Derek managed to acknowledge the affair while simultaneously reframing it as him being a supportive friend to someone in need. He even managed to imply that Seren's marital problems had existed before he'd entered the picture. The point is, Derek continued, what happened between Seren and me was a mistake, but it's over now. What Mason is doing, harassing us, spreading lies about us, trying to destroy our reputations, that's not a mistake. That's a choice. I waited until Derek finished his speech, then stood up from my table near the back of the room. Every head turned toward me, and I could feel the weight of their expectations. Some of them were hoping I'd break down or lose my temper. Others were probably expecting me to apologize and beg for forgiveness. Instead, I walked calmly to the bar where Drew was standing. "You're absolutely right, Derek," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the quiet room. "What I'm doing is a choice, and I choose to let everyone hear exactly what you and my wife really think about the people in this room." I nodded to Drew, who pressed a button on the sound system. Seren's voice filled the bar, clear and unmistakable. God, I almost feel bad for Mason. He has no idea what's coming, but honestly, it's his own fault for being so clueless. The room went completely silent. Seren's face went white, and she started to say something, but Derek's voice cut her off through the speakers. "At least when this is over, we won't have to sneak around anymore." Though I have to admit, the sneaking around was half the fun. I let the recording play for another 30 seconds, long enough for everyone to hear Seren laughing about how easy it was to manipulate me and Derek, bragging about the expensive hotel room he'd charged to my credit card. "Turn it off," Seren said, her voice barely above a whisper. But the recording wasn't finished. The next part featured Seren talking to Lila about their strategy for destroying my reputation. The key is to get to his family first. If I can convince his mother and sister that he's being controlling and abusive, they'll pressure him to just give me what I want instead of fighting it. Lila's voice came through the speakers next. "What about Derek's wife? She might be a problem." "Monica's not that smart," Seren replied dismissively. "Derek says she's completely clueless about everything. She'll never figure out what's really going on." That's when Monica stood up from her corner table. "Actually, Seren," she said, her voice cutting through the stunned silence, "I figured it out months ago." Monica walked across the room until she was standing directly in front of Seren and Derek. She was holding a manila folder, the same one she'd shown me at her house, and her expression was calm but determined. "I've been documenting Derek's lies for 6 months," she said, opening the folder and pulling out a stack of credit card statements. The hotel bills, the restaurant charges, the jewelry purchases that never made it home to me. She turned to address the room, but her eyes stayed fixed on Derek. "My husband told everyone he was working on some big real estate deal that was going to make us rich. He used that story to explain why he was working late so often, why he needed new clothes, why he was spending so much money on client entertainment." Monica pulled out another document, a letter from Derek's supervisor. There was no big deal. Derek hasn't closed a significant sale in 8 months. In fact, his performance has been so poor that he's been placed on probation. Derek tried to interrupt, but Monica wasn't finished. "The best part," she continued, "is that Derek's been paying for his affair with Seren using a credit card that's linked to our joint account. So technically, I've been funding my husband's betrayal." She walked over to Derek and handed him the folder. "These are copies of all the financial records. The originals are with my divorce attorney." Then she turned to Seren. "As for you being smarter than me, well, let's just say that underestimating people seems to be a pattern for you." Monica reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. "Derek's been sending me screenshots of your text conversations for weeks, trying to convince me that you were the one pursuing him. Apparently, he thought throwing you under the bus would save his marriage. She held up the phone so everyone could see the screen. Here's my personal favorite. Seren is getting really clingy and emotional. I think she's more invested in this than I am. How do I let her down easy without causing drama? Seren's face went from white to red. That's not… He never said… Oh, but he did, Monica interrupted. Derek's been playing both sides this entire time. He wanted the affair, but he also wanted to make sure he had an exit strategy that would let him blame everything on you. The room erupted in chaos. Seren started screaming at Derek, accusing him of betraying her just like he'd betrayed his wife. Derek was trying to explain himself to multiple people at once, his voice getting higher and more desperate with each word. Lila, who'd been silent since her voice had come through the speakers, was trying to sneak toward the exit, but Aaron blocked her path. Not so fast, my sister said. I think everyone here would be interested to know about your role in planning this whole deception. But the real fireworks started when Derek's brother Kevin, who'd come to support his sibling, realized that Derek had been lying to him too. You told me Mason was stalking you, Kevin said, grabbing Derek by the arm. You said he was making threats and harassing your co-workers, but this recording makes it sound like you and Seren were planning to destroy his reputation from the beginning. Derek tried to pull away, but Kevin's grip tightened. I vouched for you, Derek. I told people that Mason was dangerous and that you were just an innocent victim. I defended you to Monica, to your boss, to anyone who would listen. Kevin, let me explain. Explain what? That you've been lying to everyone who cares about you? That you've been laughing about it behind our backs? The confrontation might have turned physical if Drew hadn't stepped in, but not before Kevin had made his feelings clear to everyone in the room. My brother is a liar and a coward, he announced, and anyone who believes a word he says from now on is a fool. As the evening wound down and people started to leave, I found myself standing alone with Drew behind the bar, watching Serene and Derek have what appeared to be their final argument in the parking lot. Think that went well, Drew said, wiping down glasses with a satisfied expression. Better than I expected. I was watching through the window as Derek got into his car and drove away, leaving Seren standing alone under the streetlight. Though I have a feeling this isn't over. Drew followed my gaze. What do you think she'll do next? I thought about the woman I'd been married to for 8 years, the woman who'd planned this betrayal with the same attention to detail that she used to organize our anniversary parties. She'll try one more play, I said. Something desperate and dramatic. Seren doesn't know how to lose gracefully. I was right, but I had no idea how desperate she was willing to get. The next morning, I woke up to find my car tires slashed and a brick through my living room window. Spray painted on my driveway in red letters were the words stalker and abuser. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the email waiting in my inbox from Seren's lawyer, informing me that she was claiming ownership of our condo under a domestic violence protection statute and that I had 48 hours to vacate the premises. She was trying to take my home. That's when I remembered the clause she'd signed years ago without reading it, and I realized that Seren had just made the biggest mistake of her life. The clause was buried on page 7 of a refinancing agreement we'd signed 3 years ago when interest rates dropped. Seren had been in a hurry that day, rushing to get to her book club meeting, and she'd signed every document the mortgage broker put in front of her without reading the fine print. Right of sole disposition in case of marital fraud, Erin read aloud, her finger tracing the legal language. Holy hell, Mason. Do you know what this means? We were sitting in her law office at 7 a.m. on Saturday morning, surrounded by coffee cups and the scattered documents of my marriage's destruction. I'd called her after finding the brick through my window, and she'd agreed to meet me before her regular Saturday appointments. It means I can sell the condo without her signature if I can prove she committed fraud during our marriage, I said. And thanks to last night's recording session, I can prove exactly that. Erin leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. She's claiming the condo as a domestic violence safe space, which means she's betting everything on the court believing her version of events. But if you sell it before the hearing, she gets nothing. I felt something cold and satisfied settle in my chest. No safe space, no marital asset, no leverage. There's just one problem, Aaron said. You'll need to move fast. Once her lawyer figures out what you're doing, they'll file an injunction to stop the sale. How fast? 72 hours, maybe less. I spent Saturday morning on the phone with real estate agents, mortgage companies, and title companies, explaining that I needed to execute an emergency sale of my property. The story I told was simple and mostly true. My wife had abandoned the marital home to live with another man, and I needed to liquidate assets before she could claim them in divorce proceedings. By Saturday afternoon, I had 3 cash offers from investors who specialized in quick property purchases. None of them were for full market value, but they were all legitimate offers that could close within 48 hours. I accepted the highest bid at 2 p.m. and signed the purchase agreement at 4 p.m. But Seren wasn't sitting idle while I dismantled her legal strategy. Sunday morning, I woke up to find Derek's BMW parked across the street from my house. He was sitting behind the wheel, talking on his phone, and occasionally looking toward my front door. When I went outside to get the newspaper, he started his car and drove away. An hour later, he was back. He's surveilling you, Drew said when I called to report the situation. Probably trying to document some kind of threatening behavior he can use in court. Should I call the police? And tell them what? That your wife's boyfriend is sitting on a public street. They'll laugh you off the phone. Drew was right, but Derek's presence was making me nervous. I had a closing scheduled for Monday afternoon, and I couldn't afford any complications that might give Seren's lawyer grounds to stop the sale. That's when I decided to turn the tables. I called Monica. Derek's outside my house, I told her. Has been for the past 2 hours. I thought you might want to know where your husband is spending his Sunday morning. Monica was quiet for a moment. He told me he was playing golf with clients. Well, unless I've suddenly become a very important client, I think he might be lying again. 20 minutes later, Monica's BMW SUV pulled up behind Derek's sedan. I watched from my living room window as she got out of her car, walked up to Derek's driver's side window, and had what appeared to be a very animated conversation. Derek's surveillance operation ended abruptly, but Monday morning brought a new problem. Seren had figured out what I was doing. Emergency injunction hearing at 2 p.m., Aaron said when she called at 10 a.m. Her lawyer is claiming that selling the condo constitutes destruction of marital assets and financial abuse. Can they stop the sale? They can try, but the closing is scheduled for 1 p.m., and if we can get the deed recorded before the hearing, there's not much they can do about it. The race was on. I met the buyer and his attorney at the title company at 12:30 p.m. The paperwork had been prepared in advance, and everyone involved understood that speed was essential. We were signing documents and transferring funds while Seren and her lawyer were probably driving to the courthouse. At 12:47 p.m., the deed transfer was recorded with the county clerk's office. At 12:51 p.m., the wire transfer hit my bank account. At 1:03 p.m., I was no longer the owner of the condo where Seren and I had lived for the past 5 years. The emergency hearing was a formality. Seren's lawyer argued passionately about financial abuse and marital asset destruction, but the judge was unimpressed. Your client abandoned the marital home to cohabit with another man, Judge Martinez said, looking over his reading glasses at Seren's attorney. She then filed false domestic violence claims to try to seize the property. The defendant had every legal right to dispose of his assets as he saw fit. Your Honor, the speed of this transaction suggests that Mr. Redden was protecting himself from further fraudulent claims by his wife. The judge interrupted. Motion denied. But I wasn't finished. That evening I drove to the condo where Seren was staying, the same building where she'd been living since leaving our house. I parked across the street and waited. At 7:23 p.m., Derek's BMW pulled into the visitor parking area. I watched him walk to the building entrance, key in the security code, and disappear inside. I gave them 30 minutes to get comfortable, then I made my move. The building's security system was managed by the same company that handled IT security for several of my clients. I knew their systems well enough to understand their vulnerabilities, and I'd prepared for this moment. Using a signal amplifier and some basic social engineering, I triggered the building's fire alarm system. Within minutes, residents were evacuating the building, including Seren and Derek. They stood together on the sidewalk in their bathrobes, looking confused and annoyed as fire trucks arrived to investigate the false alarm. That's when I approached them. "Seren," I said, walking up to where they were standing with a group of other residents. "I wanted to personally deliver this." I handed her an envelope containing the deed transfer and a brief note. "Everything you used against me was built on my name, and now you have nothing left to use." She opened the envelope, read the contents, and her face went through a series of expressions: confusion, understanding, and finally, pure rage. "You can't do this," she said, her voice rising above the noise of the fire trucks. "That's my home too." "Actually, it's not," I replied calmly. "It never was. The condo was purchased with my inheritance money before we got married. You signed a prenup waiving your rights to premarital assets. And as of this afternoon, I don't own it anymore either." Derek stepped forward, trying to insert himself into the conversation. "Mason, this is harassment. You can't just what, Derek? Can't just sell my own property? Can't just protect myself from fraudulent legal claims? Can't just make sure that the woman who betrayed me doesn't profit from that betrayal?" A crowd was gathering. Other residents, firefighters, and random passers-by were all watching our confrontation with the kind of fascinated attention that people reserve for public meltdowns. "You're sick," Seren said, her voice shaking with anger. "You're a sick, vindictive man who can't handle the fact that I don't love you anymore." "You're right," I said. "I can't handle it. But not for the reasons you think." I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recording app. "I can't handle the fact that you never loved me at all. That our entire marriage was apparently just a convenience for you until something better came along." I held up the phone so she could see that I was recording. "But mostly, I can't handle the fact that you thought I was stupid enough to let you destroy my life without consequences." Serene lunged for my phone, but Derek caught her arm and pulled her back. "Don't," he said quietly. "You're just giving him what he wants." Derek was smarter than I'd given him credit for. He understood that any physical confrontation would be captured on multiple phones and would only make them look worse. But Seren was past the point of strategic thinking. "You want to know the truth, Mason?" she screamed, loud enough for everyone in a 3-block radius to hear. "The truth is that I've been faking it for years. The truth is that Derek makes me feel things you never could. The truth is that I would rather be homeless than spend another day pretending to be married to a pathetic loser like you." The crowd went silent. Even the firefighters had stopped what they were doing to watch the show. I looked around at all the faces staring at us, then back at Seren. "Thank you," I said simply. "That's exactly what I needed to hear." I turned and walked back to my car, leaving Seren and Derek standing on the sidewalk in their bathrobes, surrounded by their new neighbors who'd just gotten a very clear picture of what kind of people they were. As I drove home, my phone started buzzing with notifications. The confrontation had been filmed by at least 6 different people, and the videos were already being shared on social media. By morning, Seren and Derek's public meltdown would be viral in our social circle. But I still wasn't finished with them. The next phase would require some help from an unexpected ally, and it would push both of them past their breaking point. Monica called me at 6 a.m. on Tuesday morning, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Derek didn't come home last night," she said without preamble. "I'm assuming he's with your wife, probably trying to figure out their next move." "Probably." I was already dressed and drinking my first cup of coffee, having learned not to sleep too deeply when Seren was planning her counterattacks. Any idea what they might be thinking? Actually, yes. Monica's voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. Derek left his laptop open when he rushed out yesterday after that scene at the condo building. I found some very interesting emails. She paused, and I could hear papers rustling in the background. They're planning to sue you for intentional infliction of emotional distress, she continued. Apparently, Derek has been documenting what he calls your campaign of harassment and psychological warfare. He's got photos, timestamps, witness statements, the whole thing. Witness statements? Lila mostly, and a couple of Derek's friends who were at the bar on Thursday night. They're claiming that you orchestrated that entire confrontation to publicly humiliate Seren and Derek. I had to admire the strategy. It was exactly what I would have done in their position. Flip the narrative and make me look like the aggressor. There's more, Monica said. They're also planning to claim that you've been using your IT skills to hack their phones and computers. Derek's been telling people that you're some kind of cyber stalker who's been monitoring their every move. Can they prove any of that? They don't need to prove it. They just need to create enough doubt to make you look like the bad guy again. Monica sighed. Derek's always been good at manipulating situations to his advantage. He's convinced half his golf buddies that you're some kind of dangerous obsessive who can't accept that his marriage is over. I thought about this while I finished my coffee. Serene and Derek were trying to regain control of the narrative by painting me as a tech-savvy stalker who'd used my professional skills to wage psychological warfare against them. It was actually a pretty good strategy, especially since some of it was technically true. Monica, I said finally, how would you feel about helping me end this once and for all? What do you have in mind? I'm thinking it's time for Derek to face some consequences for his professional behavior, and I'm thinking you're exactly the right person to make that happen. Derek worked for Pinnacle Commercial Real Estate, one of the most prestigious firms in the city. His success there had always been a source of pride for him. He loved telling people at parties about his big deals and important clients. What Derek didn't know was that Monica had gone to college with Pinnacle's managing partner, Janet Holbrook, and they'd stayed in touch over the years. Janet's very strict about the firm's reputation, Monica explained as we sat in her kitchen Tuesday afternoon, planning our approach. She's built Pinnacle into a top-tier company by maintaining the highest ethical standards. If she found out that one of her agents was using company resources for personal drama, Monica trailed off, but I could see where she was going. What kind of company resources? She opened Derek's laptop, which he'd apparently forgotten in his rush to get to Seren after the condo confrontation. The screen showed his email inbox, and Monica scrolled through recent messages. He's been using his company email to coordinate with Seren, she said, pointing to a thread of messages. Look at this. He sent her confidential client information to help her find a new apartment. And here, he's using the firm's legal counsel to get advice about the restraining order. The emails painted a picture of someone who'd completely lost his professional boundaries. Derek had been treating Pinnacle's resources like his personal support system, using company time and money to manage his affair and its aftermath. There's more, Monica said, clicking on Derek's calendar. He's been scheduling personal meetings during work hours and marking them as client appointments. Look at this. Client consultation at the Grandview Hotel, same time as one of his rendezvous with Seren. You think Janet would be interested in seeing this? I think Janet would be very interested in seeing this. We spent the next hour documenting Derek's misuse of company resources. Monica forwarded the most damaging emails to her personal account, and I helped her create a comprehensive timeline of Derek's professional misconduct. But we weren't just going after Derek. Seren worked as HR director for a mid-size marketing firm called Creative Solutions. Her job involved maintaining professional standards and ensuring that employees followed company policies about ethical behavior. The irony wasn't lost on me. I've got contacts at Creative Solutions too, Monica said when I mentioned Seren's employment situation. My yoga instructor's husband works in their accounting department. He's mentioned some concerns about their HR practices. What kind of concerns? The kind that might interest the state labor board if they knew that the HR director had been falsifying her timesheets and using company resources to research divorce lawyers. We had Seren's voice recording admitting to exactly those violations, plus the GPS data showing that she'd been at hotels with Derek during hours when she'd claimed to be working late on company projects. By Wednesday afternoon, we'd assembled comprehensive evidence packages for both Derek's and Seren's employers. But instead of sending them directly, we decided to let Derek and Seren make the first move. They're planning to file their lawsuit on Friday, Monica reported after checking Derek's email again. He's been telling everyone that they're going to take you for everything you're worth and make you pay for destroying their reputations. Perfect, I said. Let them file. Let them go on record claiming that I'm a cyber stalker and a harasser. Let them paint themselves as innocent victims of my obsessive behavior. And then? And then we show their employers exactly what kind of innocent victims they really are. Thursday night, Derek finally came home. Monica texted me at 11 p.m. He's here. Wants to talk about reconciliation. Says the whole thing with Seren was a mistake and he's ready to work on our marriage. I called her back immediately. What are you going to tell him? I'm going to tell him exactly what he wants to hear, Monica said. I'm going to let him think that he's manipulated me into giving him another chance. And while he's feeling confident and secure, I'm going to let him destroy himself. Friday morning, Derek and Seren filed their joint lawsuit against me, claiming damages of $500,000 for intentional infliction of emotional distress, harassment, and invasion of privacy. The local legal newspaper picked up the story, framing it as a case about the dangers of cyber stalking and the abuse of technical skills in domestic disputes. Derek gave an interview to a blogger who covered local business news, presenting himself as a successful real estate agent who'd been targeted by a vindictive ex-husband with dangerous computer skills. Mason Redden represents everything that's wrong with our digital age, Derek was quoted as saying. He's used his technical knowledge to wage a campaign of psychological terrorism against two people whose only crime was falling in love. The story painted me as a cautionary tale about the dark side of IT expertise, while Derek and Seren were portrayed as victims of technological abuse. It was exactly what I'd been hoping for. Friday afternoon, Monica sent the evidence package to Janet Holbrook at Pinnacle Commercial Real Estate. The package included Derek's emails, calendar entries, and expense reports, along with a detailed explanation of how he'd been misusing company resources to manage his personal drama. Saturday morning, I sent a similar package to Creative Solutions, documenting Seren's timesheet violations and misuse of company resources. Both packages included copies of Derek's interview, where he'd publicly admitted to having an affair with a married woman while claiming to be the victim of harassment. Monday morning, Derek was fired from Pinnacle Commercial Real Estate for gross misconduct and misuse of company resources. Janet Holbrook's termination letter, which Monica forwarded to me, was a masterpiece of professional destruction. Your conduct has brought discredit to this firm and violated every principle of professional ethics we hold dear, the letter read. Your decision to use company resources to facilitate an extramarital affair, followed by your choice to publicly discuss this matter with the media, demonstrates a complete lack of judgment and integrity. Monday afternoon, Seren was placed on administrative leave, pending an investigation into her HR practices. The State Labor Board had received an anonymous complaint about timesheet falsification and misuse of company resources, and Creative Solutions was required to conduct a formal investigation. By Tuesday, both Derek and Seren were unemployed and facing professional disgrace in their respective industries. But they weren't finished fighting. Wednesday morning, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. Mason? The voice was Serene's, but she sounded different, smaller, more desperate than I'd ever heard her. Hello, Seren. We need to talk. Derek and we want to work something out. Some kind of settlement that works for everyone. I'm listening. Can you meet us tonight? Somewhere neutral. We just want to end this before it gets any worse. I thought about it for a moment. Serene and Derek had lost their jobs, their reputations, and their lawsuit. They were backed into a corner with no good options left, which meant they were at their most dangerous. Where did you have in mind? I asked. The construction site on 5th Street. The new office building they're putting up, it's quiet, private, we can talk without anyone interfering. Every instinct I had was screaming that this was a trap, but I was curious to see what their endgame looked like. What time? 8 o'clock. Come alone, and we'll come alone. After she hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, thinking about the past month and everything that had led to this moment. Serene and Derek had started this war with careful planning and strategic deception. They'd tried to destroy my reputation, steal my assets, and paint me as an abusive stalker. Now they were desperate and cornered, which made them unpredictable. I called Drew and Monica, explaining the situation and asking them to be on standby. Then I drove to the construction site on 5th Street, wondering if I was walking into the final confrontation or the most elaborate trap Serene had ever devised. The construction site was dark and empty, surrounded by chain-link fencing and warning signs. The skeletal frame of the new office building rose into the night sky, 20 stories of steel and concrete that would eventually house hundreds of workers. Tonight, it was the perfect place for secrets to be buried. I arrived at the construction site 15 minutes early, parking across the street where I could observe the entrance. The building's frame cast long shadows in the streetlight, and I could see that someone had already cut a hole in the chain-link fence. Serene and Derek were waiting for me. At exactly 8 o'clock, I walked through the gap in the fence and into the construction site. The ground was muddy from recent rain, and I had to watch my footing as I made my way toward the building's entrance. Serene stepped out from behind a pile of construction materials, followed by Derek. In the dim light, they both looked haggard and desperate. Derek's usual confidence was gone, replaced by the nervous energy of someone who'd run out of options. "Thank you for coming," Serene said, her voice carefully controlled. "I know this situation has gotten out of hand, and I think it's time we found a way to end it." "I'm listening." Derek stepped forward, holding up his hands in a gesture of surrender. "Look, Mason, we all made mistakes here. Serene and what we did was wrong. We hurt you and we hurt Monica, and we're sorry for that." It was the first time either of them had actually apologized, and I found myself wondering what they wanted badly enough to swallow their pride. "But what you've done to us in response," Derek continued, "it's destroyed our lives. We've lost our jobs, our reputations, our friends. Enough is enough." Serene nodded, moving closer. "We're prepared to drop the lawsuit and sign a mutual non-disclosure agreement. We'll all agree to stop talking about what happened, stop posting on social media, stop involving other people in our personal business." "And in exchange?" "In exchange, you stop the campaign against us," Serene said. "No more evidence packages to employers, no more public confrontations, no more digital surveillance. We all just move on with our lives." It sounded reasonable, almost too reasonable. "What about the divorce proceedings?" I asked. "We'll settle everything quietly," Serene replied. "No contested hearings, no fighting over assets. We'll divide things fairly and file no-fault papers." Derek was nodding along, but I could see something in his eyes that didn't match his conciliatory words. He kept glancing toward the building entrance, like he was expecting someone else to arrive. "This is very generous," I said carefully, "but I'm curious. What changed? Last week you were convinced that I was a dangerous stalker who deserved to be sued into bankruptcy. Now you want to shake hands and walk away?" Serene and Derek exchanged a look, and I saw Derek give her an almost imperceptible nod. "The truth is," Serene said, "we've realized that this whole situation has gotten too public, Too messy. We're all going to lose if we keep fighting. Plus, Derek added, Monica's divorce lawyer has made it clear that the longer this goes on, the worse it's going to be for both of us financially. That's when I understood what was really happening. You're not here to apologize, I said. You're here because Monica's attorney found something that scares you. Derek's face went pale, confirming my suspicion. What did she find, Derek? Hidden assets? Fraudulent business deals? Or maybe something that could land you in actual legal trouble? It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. I pulled out my phone and held it up so they could see the screen. Monica sent me some very interesting documents this afternoon. Want to guess what they were? Derek started to back away, but Seren grabbed his arm. We had a deal, she hissed at him. You said you could handle this. Handle what, Seren? I asked. Handle the fact that Derek's been embezzling money from his real estate clients? Handle the fact that you've been helping him launder it through fake HR consulting fees? The color drained from Serene's face. You don't have any proof of that. Actually, I do. I scrolled through my phone, showing them screenshots of bank records and email exchanges that Monica had recovered from Derek's laptop. Monica's been very thorough in documenting her husband's criminal activities. She's already turned everything over to the authorities. Derek lunged forward, trying to grab my phone, but I stepped back quickly. That's when I realized this wasn't just a settlement meeting. This was a trap. You're right, Derek said, his mask of contrition finally dropping completely. This is a trap, but not the kind you're thinking. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small recording device. We've been recording this entire conversation, Mason, and you just admitted to cyber stalking, harassment, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Seren smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. Did you really think we'd just roll over and let you destroy us? We've been planning this for days. Planning what, exactly? Planning to get you on record admitting to all the crimes you've committed against us, Derek said. Hacking our phones, stealing our personal information, coordinating with Monica to frame me for embezzlement. The embezzlement is real, Derek. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But what's definitely real is this recording of you confessing to multiple felonies. Derek held up the device, grinning with renewed confidence. Our lawsuit just got a lot stronger. I looked at both of them, standing there in the muddy construction site, so proud of their little trap. They thought they'd finally outsmarted me. You know what's funny about recordings? I said, pulling out my own device. They work both ways. Serene's smile faltered. What do you mean? I mean, I've been recording this conversation too. And unlike your edited version, mine captures everything, including Derek admitting that this is a trap and you both acknowledging that the embezzlement might be real. Derek's face went white. You can't use that. It's illegal to record someone without their consent. Actually, it's not. This is a one-party consent state, which means I only need my own permission to record a conversation I'm participating in. I held up my phone. But more importantly, you just confessed to conspiracy to commit fraud by trying to create false evidence against me. The tables had turned again, and I could see both Seren and Derek realizing that their trap had backfired spectacularly. This isn't over, Seren said, her voice shaking with rage. You think you're so smart, but you've made enemies of the wrong people. What's that supposed to mean? Derek stepped forward, and I could see that his desperation had transformed into something much more dangerous. It means we've got nothing left to lose, Mason. No jobs, no reputations, no future. Which means we can do things that people with something to lose can't do. The threat was clear, and I realized that this confrontation was about to escalate beyond words. That's when the construction site's floodlights suddenly blazed to life, illuminating the entire area in harsh white light. Nobody's doing anything, Monica's voice called out from somewhere above us, except maybe explaining to the police why you're trespassing on private property. I looked up and saw Monica standing on the building's second-floor framework, holding a phone and what appeared to be a very bright flashlight. Behind her, I could see Drew and two other figures I didn't recognize. "The police are already on their way," Drew shouted down, "along with representatives from the district attorney's office who are very interested in those embezzlement charges." Derek spun around, looking for an escape route, but the construction site was surrounded and the only exit was blocked by security guards who'd apparently been waiting for exactly this moment. "You set us up," Seren said, staring up at Monica with pure hatred. "Actually," Monica replied, "you set yourselves up. I just made sure there were witnesses when you did it." The next 20 minutes were chaos. Police cars arrived, followed by detectives, followed by representatives from both Derek's and Seren's former employers who wanted to discuss the evidence of financial fraud that had been uncovered during their termination investigations. Derek was arrested on embezzlement charges. Seren was taken in for questioning about her role in laundering the stolen money through fake consulting contracts. But the real victory wasn't watching them get handcuffed in the back of police cars. The real victory was standing on the roof of that unfinished building with Monica and Drew, looking down at the city lights and finally feeling like the war was over. "So what happens now?" Drew asked, passing around a thermos of coffee that he'd somehow managed to bring to our impromptu rooftop celebration. "Now they face the consequences of their choices," I said. "Real consequences, not just social embarrassment or professional setbacks. Derek's looking at serious prison time for the embezzlement, and Seren's going to have to explain to prosecutors why she was helping him hide stolen money." Monica nodded, her expression grim but satisfied. "The authorities found evidence of at least 12 different fraudulent transactions over the past 8 months. Derek was stealing money from real estate escrow accounts and funneling it through Seren's fake HR consulting business." "How much money are we talking about?" "Nearly $200,000. Drew whistled low. "That's federal crime territory." "It gets worse," Monica continued. "Some of the money he stole was from elderly clients who were trying to downsize their homes, people who trusted him to handle their life savings. I thought about Derek's expensive hotel rooms and designer clothes, all paid for with money stolen from retirees who'd worked their entire lives to build modest nest eggs. "Good," I said simply. "Let them both rot." We stood there in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city spread out below us. The construction site had returned to darkness, and the police cars had departed with their prisoners. Tomorrow, the local news would report on the arrest of 2 professionals for embezzlement and fraud. There would be no mention of affairs or divorce drama, just the simple story of criminals facing justice. "You know what the best part is?" Monica said finally. "What's that?" "They thought they were so much smarter than us. They thought they could manipulate us, lie to us, steal from us, and we'd just accept it because we were too stupid or too weak to fight back." She turned to look at me, her expression fierce with satisfaction. They were wrong. As we made our way down from the rooftop and back to our cars, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not the temporary satisfaction of a successful revenge plot, but the deeper peace that comes from knowing that justice had been served. Seren and Derek had wanted closure. They'd gotten it, just not the kind they'd been expecting. Standing in that empty parking lot, shaking hands with Monica and Drew, I realized that my own closure had finally arrived too. "Everything you used against me was built on my name," I said quietly, repeating the words I'd written in my final message to Seren. "And now you have nothing left to use." The war was over, and I had won.